my piece over the weekend, Finding the Off-Ramp. As the dust settles, it is crystal clear that President Kenyatta pulled off a serious political victory. The president's team outthought, outspent, and outmaneuvered the opposition at practically every turn. Mr. Musyoka's intemperate remarks that Central Province should lie low like an envelope just 24 hours before the vote surely dialed up the vote in Jubilee strongholds. Mr. Odinga's call for rent controls put every owner on notice, and I think that too was an ill-advised call and underestimated the ownership economy. There are many Kenyans today who, after years of graft, own a piece of the economy, and they surely got nervous. It is time now for the opposition to skip a generation, and this is said with humility. It is also time for the opposition to appreciate, once the trauma of losing subsides, that there are two audiences. The first audience is its own supporters. The second is everyone else. If you are going to argue the case that a cyber crime was committed, then for goodness sake, find someone who can make that argument credibly, which is what Joe Odinga in the previous article was saying. In fact, the election had the potential to produce quite a bifurcated economic outcome. Kenya stands in the vanguard of free market economics in Africa. It has taken more than 50 years to establish our credentials in that regard. An Odinga administration would have taken a leftist tilt, and the markets naturally were more aligned with President Kenyatta, and hence the very positive market reaction. Stock market gained around 5% last week, and Kenya's Eurobonds had their best week in 2017. We need to build on that positive momentum to crowd local and international investors into Kenya. What we have learned is that 5 to 6% GDP growth, while better than most in Africa, after being diluted for population expansion, is not effecting meaningful trickle-down. It was this fact recharacterized as a refrain, "You cannot eat GDP," which the opposition failed to leverage to their own chagrin. Therefore, we have to find a GDP off-ramp, one where the economy speeds up to 8% or more. Kenya has to dash for growth. That's a sine qua non for the next 5 years. President Kenyatta has to be St. George in his second administration and slay the corruption dragon. I recall a period in 2002 when citizens performed citizens' arrests of policemen for asking for bribes and marched them to the police station. It was a remarkable moment and shows that it is possible to do something. A big effort on this front would release at least $1 billion and more per annum and juice the GDP move towards 8%. The president needs to consider how to recapture that cathartic moment that we witnessed in 2002. Infrastructure spending like the railway were absolutely necessary if we are serious about entrenching our pivot transit state status, i.e. the route to the sea and the global markets for a number of adjacent states. Then we absolutely needed to make these big-ticket investments in the railways, the roads, and the ports. Already President Magufuli has proven a fierce competitor, and his recent oil pipeline win shows that. So these investments were necessary. Many commentators, in my opinion, have underestimated the positive economic spillover effects that will arise from these investments. Today, companies can tap into cheap power. Geothermal is one example. They can situate themselves close to the railways. They can export goods via the railway to the sea and to a 3 billion people market on our doorstep in the Indian Ocean economy, let alone the 7 billion market in the wider globe. We have a vast reservoir of good human capital that is hard-working, and these all are the magic ingredients for creating a Mekong Delta economy that becomes an accelerant. Debt is an issue, it's blinking amber. We can argue that a ratio of around 53% debt to GDP We are comfortably within 60%, which was the Maastricht criteria for the European project, for example. But we now have run out of headroom. We will need to eat more delicately at the debt table. We will have to sequence our big dreams. We cannot do everything at once. How we manage our debt will be important in the second term. We need to aggressively interrogate return on investment so that we push those projects that have a higher and quicker ROI profile. Tactically speaking, there is an opportunity to unload more Eurobonds in the short term, but over the medium term we need to now sequence better and bite off only what we can comfortably service. We need to now also call a stop to the endless bailout Groundhog Day rigmarole. Kenya Airways was a national interest issue. If we want to be a gateway to Africa and a hub, we absolutely needed a national airline. There was no choice around the Kenya Airways rescue. However, we now need to establish where that national interest red line lies, and companies that fall on the wrong side of that line must be left to fail. The government put option has to end. One of the most progressive elements of our economic policy over the last 15 years was the privatization policy, which saw its culmination in the sale of Safaricom shares for 5 shillings way back in 2006. We need to reignite that program. It's a silver bullet. It gets GOK out of business, it gives citizens a stake, and those who have a stake tend not to burn things down. The secret of such a program is not to milk the cow, but to ensure that citizens are sold shares at prices that give them a profit. Optimal pricing keeps the pipe flowing. There is a tsunami of cash to be tapped internationally and domestically, but never ever leave citizens nursing losses. Our economy is not a monoline economy, it is multifaceted, it has multi-dimensional promise, from the ubiquity of mobile money to the promise of the entrepreneurial spirit in every citizen's DNA. I was transfixed by the long queues of Kenyans waiting patiently to cast their votes, and then I noticed a fellow who had set up his own coffee stand, and I thought, that's my Kenya. If opportunity comes knocking, Kenyans seize it. We just need to ensure it comes knocking. Finally, I liked the tone of President Kenyatta's acceptance speech. You are indeed the president of 43 million Kenyans. The president needs to include everybody. Kisumu, for example, is about to receive a huge investment from EABL. There are plenty more investments that we can make or help others make. It's a carpe diem moment. Over to you, President Kenyatta.